My child, I need you to hear me before the noise of this day takes over, before the scroll takes you somewhere else. Before you put this down and go back to the ordinary motion of a life that has been carrying something extraordinary underneath it for longer than you have let yourself acknowledge. Because what I am about to say to you is not something I prepared for a general audience and happened to send in your direction. This is something I prepared for the exact shape of what you have been through, the exact texture of what you tried to explain to people who were not there and could not quite understand, the exact weight of what you carried out of a relationship that took more from you than anyone looking from the outside ever fully saw. I see what it took out of you. I see what you walked away from. And I see what it cost you to walk away from it. And I see what happened after you left. And I see where you are standing right now in relationship to all of it, which is not as far from it as you appear to be, and not as healed as you tell people you are, and not as indifferent as you have learned to perform when the subject comes up. I see all of it. And I need you to know that what I am about to tell you is not permission to feel something small. It is an invitation to understand something large. Type Amen if you believe God has been watching your entire story from the beginning. Let me start where it actually started. Not where the relationship started, but where you started. Because who you were when you entered that relationship matters to what I am saying to you now. You were someone who loved with your whole capacity. Not naively, not without wisdom, but fully without the kind of emotional withholding that some people use to protect themselves from the cost of genuine love. You went in with your whole heart available, because that is how I designed you to love. Because partial love is not something I built into your architecture. Because the way you attach and commit and invest yourself in a person you have chosen is one of the most complete expressions of who you are. That fullness in you is not a flaw that needed to be corrected by a painful experience. It is one of the things I am most deliberate about in how I made you. What happened was not a lesson about how to love less. What happened was a revelation about who was not worthy of how you love. There is a difference, and I need that difference to settle somewhere deep in you before I say anything else. Because one of the most damaging things that can come out of a relationship that treated your love carelessly is the quiet conclusion that the love itself was the problem. That if you had held back more, trusted less, invested more slowly, protected yourself more completely, the outcome would have been different. I want to address that conclusion directly and clearly. The outcome would not have been different, because the problem was never the way you loved. The problem was that you were loving someone who did not know what to do with being loved that way, who did not have the interior infrastructure to receive it, without eventually breaking under its weight, or turning against it, or finding ways to make it smaller, so it would fit inside the smaller thing they were capable of returning. That is not your fault. That was their limit, and their limit was not your ceiling. Type yes, Lord, if you know that the way you love is not what needs to change. Now I want to speak about what you saw. Because you saw something. You saw it before you fully admitted it to yourself, and you saw it clearly before anyone else in your life believed you about it. And you may have left the relationship still holding the quiet uncertainty of whether what you saw was real, whether your perception was accurate, whether the version of events you carry is the true one, or whether the story that was told about you after it ended has some validity that you have not been able to fully dismiss. I want to speak to that uncertainty and end it, because it has been sitting in you long enough. What you saw was real. The thing you kept noticing and kept explaining away and kept returning to with a sense of unease that would not fully resolve. The thing that made you ask questions you were made to feel was wrong to ask. The thing that showed itself in small moments that were easy to dismiss individually, but impossible to dismiss in their accumulation. The thing that your body registered before your mind caught up to it. That thing was real. Your nervous system was not malfunctioning. Your instincts were not being paranoid. The pattern you recognized was a pattern. The behavior you observed was a behavior. The version of that person that you encountered in the private interior of the relationship. The version that was different from the one being presented to the world. The version that made you feel like you were living in a reality that others could not see and would not believe. That version was the true one. And you were not crazy for seeing it. You were perceptive, you were paying attention. And the cost of paying attention in a relationship with someone who needed you not to pay too close attention was that your perception was used against you, that your accurate reading of what was happening was framed as the problem, that the person whose behavior was creating the pattern became the one explaining that you were the one with the distorted view. That inversion, the use of your own accurate perception as evidence of your instability, is one of the most disorienting things a person can experience inside a close relationship. And the fact that you came out of it still fundamentally intact, still fundamentally able to trust your own knowing, is not a small thing. It is evidence of a resilience you have not fully credited yourself for. Type justice if you know that your perception was accurate and your experience was real. Let me speak now about the new person, because I know that is the part of this that has been living in you in a complicated way. And I want to name the complication before I speak into it, because you deserve honesty about what I see in you, rather than a message that skips past the harder interior to get to the part that feels better. The complication is that what you feel about the new person is not simple. It is not purely compassionate, and it is not purely indifferent, and it is not purely something you can name cleanly. There is something in you that sees that person stepping into a space you know the interior of in ways they do not yet, moving with the ease of someone who does not yet know what they are moving into, receiving the version of your ex that is always presented at the beginning. And something in you responds to that with a mixture that includes things you are not entirely comfortable admitting. There is something that might feel like wanting them to see it quickly. Something that might feel like relief that you are no longer in the position of being the one who is still learning. Something that might feel adjacent to satisfaction at the knowledge that what you experienced was not a product of something unique to you, but a pattern that will eventually introduce itself to whoever is in that position. And underneath all of those things, if you are honest, there may also be something that genuinely does not want another person to go through what you went through. That the part of you that has the most integrity winces at the thought of someone else being handed the same experience that cost you so much. All of those things are true at the same time, and I am not here to adjudicate which one is the right one to feel. I am here to tell you that I see the whole mixture, and I am not troubled by it. And you do not need to perform a purer response than what you actually have in order to receive what I am about to say. Type I reckon this if you are giving yourself permission to feel the full complexity of this. Now let me tell you what I know about what is unfolding in that new relationship, because I see both sides of it simultaneously in a way that you cannot from your position. And what I see is this: the pattern is already showing, not loudly, not yet in a way that has been fully named, but in the small moments, in the ones that feel slightly off, in the ones that prompt a question the new person pushes away because it is too early to ask it, in the moments where something does not quite add up, and the explanation provided is just smooth enough to pass, but leaves a faint residue of unease that does not fully clear. Those moments have already happened. The new person has already felt something that they have already explained away. They have already had a version of the experience you had in the early season, where the thing that showed itself was almost too small to be certain about, where the feeling was real, but the evidence was not yet solid enough to justify the feeling. They are in the season you were in before you knew what you were in, and I want to be careful here about how I say what I am going to say, because this is not a message designed to deliver your ex to judgment or to narrate their destruction for your entertainment. That is not who I am, and it is not what this word is for. What I am telling you is not a preview of someone else's punishment. It is a confirmation of something you have needed to hear, which is that what you experienced was not a version of that person that only appeared to you, was not something you drew out of them by being who you are, was not a dynamic that was specific to your combination, and therefore implies something about what you brought. It was them. It is them. It has always been them. And the new person will arrive at the same knowing that you arrived at. Not because I am orchestrating suffering, but because patterns do not change simply by changing the person who encounters them. And what did not change internally will not stay hidden externally. And the season in which what is real on the inside can be managed successfully on the outside is always shorter than the person doing. The managing believes it to be. You know this. You lived the timeline of it. You know how long the good season lasted, and you know the shape of how it ended, and you know the markers you would recognize now that you did not know how to read then. And the new person is currently somewhere on that same timeline, in the season that you remember as the one before you understood what you were looking at. What you knew, they are in the process of learning. Type vindication if this is confirming something you have known but needed to hear aloud. I want to stop here and speak to something that has been underneath this entire experience from the beginning. Something that did not start when the relationship ended, but that the ending clarified in a way that is still working itself into your full understanding. And that is the question of what you are worth. What you are worth as a person to be loved by. What kind of love is actually proportionate to who you are. What you deserve from a relationship, and whether what you received in that one reflected your actual value or someone else's limited capacity. I want to answer that question without letting you deflect it, because I know that the easier response to what you went through is to say that you grew from it, that you learned something about yourself, that you are grateful for the lessons even if the cost was high. And while none of that is wrong exactly, it can function as a way of not fully sitting in the other answer, the harder one, which is that what was done to you was not proportionate to what you deserved, that the way you were treated was not equal to the love you brought, that the experience was not simply a neutral educational event, but an actual unjust receiving of something that should have been honored and was not. You deserved better than what you were given. That is not a small statement. I want you to sit in it for a moment, rather than immediately moving to the part where you find the silver lining. You deserved better. The love you brought was real, and it was full, and it was honest, and it deserved to be met with something of equivalent realness and fullness and honesty, and it was not. That is a loss worth grieving fully, not a lesson to file away efficiently. A loss, a real one, and I am sitting in the grief of it with you, not rushing you toward the restoration before the grief has been honored. Type amen if you are giving yourself permission to grieve what was actually lost. Now I want to speak about what happens inside a person who has been through what you have been through, because there are specific things I've been watching develop in you through this season, that the season itself was too loud for you to hear clearly. And I want to name them now, because they are part of what is coming for you, and you need to understand what you are bringing into your next chapter. The first thing is discernment. What you developed through that experience is not cynicism, though it can feel like cynicism from the inside. It is the ability to recognize a particular kind of presentation and know what it is presenting from. The smile that is too practiced. The charm that has a slightly mechanical quality when you look closely enough. The way someone talks about every ex as the one who failed to appreciate them. The small inconsistencies between the public self and the private moments that appear in the early weeks if you are watching carefully enough. You know how to read these now. Not because you became suspicious of everyone, but because you became familiar with a specific language, and that familiarity is now part of how you navigate, and it will protect you in ways you will sometimes not even consciously register. The second thing is an uncompromised clarity about what you need. You came out of that relationship knowing, in a way you could not have known before it, the specific non-negotiables of how you need to be treated, not in a demanding way, not in a list-making way, but in the quiet interior knowledge of someone who has felt the difference between being truly seen and being performed at, between being genuinely valued and being valued for what you provide, between being someone's real choice and being someone's current arrangement. That knowledge is yours now, and it is permanent, and it is one of the most valuable things you own going into everything that comes next. The third thing is a quality in your love that got tested and did not break. You loved someone fully and were not loved back equivalently, and you survived that. Not easily, not without cost, but your capacity to love was not destroyed by the experience of its being misused. That is not nothing. That is the foundation of everything. If this word has been reaching you today, I want to invite you to support this ministry by buying a coffee at koafi.com or 1111 Daily Blessings. Your seed of faith in this moment will be returned to you, multiplied, because heaven sees every act of generosity and records it in your favor. Now let me finish speaking over your life. Type "trust you" if you believe God has been developing something in you through this season. Let me now speak about what is coming, because the season you are entering is different from the one you are leaving. And I want you to understand how it is different, so you can recognize it when it arrives rather than missing it, because you are still braced for what came before. The season you are entering is not a season of finally finding the version of the same thing you tried to have before, but better. It is not a season of love that proves the last relationship wrong by being right in all the places the last one was wrong. That framing, as understandable as it is, still organizes your present around your past, still gives the past relationship the authority to define what you are looking for, still positions what went wrong as the map for what must go right. What is coming for you cannot be understood through the lens of what went before it, because what is coming does not have the shape of a corrected version of what you already experienced. It has a shape you do not yet have a template for. A love that does not require you to be perceptive about its hidden interior, because its interior and its exterior are the same thing. A relationship in which the effort is not being spent on managing the gap between what is real and what is presented, but on building something that is genuinely shared. A person whose love for you will not feel like a thing you have to earn, and then re-earn, and then earn again when the earning stops feeling like enough. You will recognize it not because it looks like what you wanted and did not get. You will recognize it because it feels like something you have not yet felt. Something quieter and more solid than what you have known. Something that does not require your nervous system to stay on alert, to monitor what it might become. Something that allows the part of you that has been on watch for so long to finally, genuinely rest. That is what I have been building while you have been healing. And the healing, even the slow and imperfect, and not fully linear healing that you have been doing, has been necessary preparation for receiving something that your previous self, before that relationship and what it taught you, would not have been fully ready to recognize or to keep. Type favor if you believe God has been preparing something you have no category for yet. Now I want to return to the new person one more time, because I said I was not here to narrate judgment, and I meant it, but I want to speak something into what their discovery will mean for you, beyond the complicated mixture of feelings I described earlier. Because there is a version of the vindication that is coming that is quieter, and more important than being proven right. It is not the satisfaction of being believed by the people who doubted you. It is not the moment where the story you told that was not fully believed becomes the story everyone understands. Though those things may come, and they may bring a real relief that you are allowed to feel without shame, the deeper vindication is internal. It is the moment when the last voice inside you that held any doubt about your own perception goes quiet. When the part of you that absorbed the framing of that relationship, the part that accepted even partially the version of events in which your response to what you were experiencing was the actual problem, that part releases the doubt it has been holding and joins the rest of you in knowing clearly that you were not wrong. You were not unstable. You were not the cause of what you experienced. And everything you felt was an accurate response to something that was genuinely happening. That internal settling is more valuable than any external confirmation. It is the restoration of your relationship with your own knowing. And your own knowing is the instrument I use most often to guide you through everything that follows. When that instrument is clear and confident and trustworthy to you again, the quality of the decisions you make, the relationships you enter, the situations you navigate, everything improves. Not because you become different, but because you become fully available to the wisdom that was always in you, and that the experience of being gaslit and doubted and redirected away from your own perception had temporarily made harder to access. The new person's discovery will complete something in you, not because of what happens to your ex, but because of what that discovery confirms about what you already knew. Type I reek this if you are ready to fully trust your own knowing again, my child. Let me speak plainly about who you are going to be on the other side of this season, fully completed. You are going to be someone who loves without the hesitation that comes from unhealed wounds. Someone who enters a new relationship with the discernment of someone who has lived the difference between what is genuine and what is performed. Who can feel that difference from early contact rather than discovering it after the investment has been made. Someone who knows their own non-negotiables, not as a defensive list, but as a clear interior knowledge of what is proportionate to who they are. Someone who will not be moved from their own perception by the sophistication of someone else's reframing of it. You are going to be someone who is harder to deceive and easier to love. And that combination, which sounds simple but is not common, is exactly what will make the relationship that is coming different from the one that is behind you. The person who wronged you did not know what they had. The person who is with them now is going to learn what you already learned, in their own time and their own way, that what presents as a great love can house something that does not sustain itself, that the early version and the real version can be very different things, and that the distance between them is measured in the particular currency of pain that you have already spent and do not need to spend again. You are on the other side of the discovery they are in the process of making, and where you are standing, on this side of having seen it clearly and having left and having rebuilt, is the better place. Not because you are glad it happened, not because you are glad they are going through it, but because you are no longer in it, And the person I have been preparing you to become, in the clearing that comes after, is someone who deserves everything I have been setting in motion for what comes next. Type Amen if you believe your next chapter is better than your last one. Go forward, my child. Go forward knowing that your perception was never the problem. Go forward knowing that what you loved with was good, and will be good again in a context that honors it. Go forward knowing that the pattern you saw is a pattern, that your departure from it was the right one, that time is confirming in the life of someone else what you already knew in your own, and that the confirmation is not the point, but it is not nothing either. You are not behind because of time spent. You are not damaged beyond use because of what was taken. You are not doomed to repeat it because you experienced it. You are refined. You are more clear. You are carrying a discernment that cannot be taught in any other way than the way you learned it. And that discernment is now a permanent part of the equipment you move through life with. The next love that finds you will find someone who knows the difference, who can feel it early, who will not explain away what they should not explain away, who will not stay past the point where staying is wisdom, who will not mistake intensity for depth or charm for character or familiarity for safety. It will find someone who knows what they are worth, who learned it the hard way, yes, but learned it completely, and that someone, fully formed in the clarity of what they have been through, is exactly who I have been building this whole time. Type I read this if you are walking into your next season as that person. Because my child, you did not just survive what happened. You became something on the other side of it. Something that could not have been forged any other way, in any other fire, by any easier road. And what you became is not a consolation prize for what you went through. It is the person I always intended you to become. It just required this particular path to get here. You are here. You are ready. And what is coming knows exactly where to find you.